gardeners, Amy here with Garden Up. Today I'm going to be talking about stinging nettle. So the scientific name for stinging nettle is Urtica dioica. It has a lot of common names. Stinging nettle, obviously, burning nettle. A lot of people call it stinger or nettle. Any combination of those two words, pretty much. So why is it called that? Well, because underneath the leaves, it has this little spine-like thing called a trichome. And the trichomes act like hypodermic needles. They're like little syringes. So these little needles are full of a chemical, several different chemicals depending on the variety of plant. But the point is that those little needles, if you brush up against the plant, they break. And then they inject that histamine into your skin, which at first you won't even notice. But a few minutes later you will, and oh my goodness, it stings, it burns, all at once. It's very uncomfortable. And needless to say, I'm wearing gloves today, okay? So if ever you're gonna work with this plant, you do wanna wear your PPE, which is gonna be cover your skin, gloves, long sleeves. If you're working with tall plants, you might wanna do something to cover your face. You know, whatever makes you feel a little more comfortable there. Stinging nettle is in the family Urticaceae. It's an herbaceous perennial, which means it dies back in the winter, but it comes back from the roots in the spring. There are 6 subspecies of this plant, and 5 of them have the hollow stinging hairs called trichomes. The plant has a long history of uses, such as traditional medicine, food, tea, and textiles. The leaves have a strongly serrated margin and a cordate base. It bears small, either green or brown, numerous flowers in a dense axillary inflorescence. The leaves and stems are very hairy, with both non-stinging hairs and trichomes. The actual burning trichomes are on the bottom of the leaf. The top of the leaf does not have these. So I can touch the top of the leaf with my bare hands, but underneath the leaf is where those trichomes are. It's native to Europe and most of temperate Asia and western North Africa, but it's now found all over the world, and that is because humans brought it there. Now, why would we bring such a nasty to work with weed all over the world? Well, that's because it's very useful. It is an incredibly beneficial plant to have in your garden. It attracts butterflies and pollinators, and it's an excellent food source for certain caterpillars. Now, I don't know if it feeds our caterpillars here in North America. I haven't been able to confirm that yet, but it feeds us. It is an excellent food plant. It's a very, very nutritious and delicious. Put it in a stir fry, oh my goodness. And it's also medicinal. It has a lot of uses in natural medicine. It's excellent for making textiles, and it's just a really versatile plant. So of course, humans, we've brought it with us all over the place, and here it is. If you're gonna eat it, like I'm going to, you wanna get the fresh spring greens, which is what's coming up right now. I'm guessing that textiles, you'd harvest it a little later when it's really tall. Medicinal uses, I know nothing about. I just know that there are medicinal uses. Stinging nettle really needs moisture to get started in the spring. That's a river, and this is growing right on a riverbank. It's everywhere along this section of the river. I don't think a person intentionally planted it here. I think it was brought in by a bird or something. It has just loved this area. Stinging nettle is also an excellent indicator plant. It really only grows in areas where the soil is rich in nutrients. So yeah, gardeners love to have it in their garden because it'll say that the soil is nutrient rich, nutrient dense. If it doesn't grow well, then you might be lacking some nutrients. I am going to be digging this up and bringing it to my garden at home, and I'm super stoked about this. I was originally invited out here last summer to dig this up and bring it, but of course last summer it was 100 degrees and I was very pregnant at the time and could hardly stand the heat. And then it hit me, I grew a couple of brain cells to rub together, that if it's too hot for me to be digging this comfortably, it's too hot to transplant. You want to transplant existing plants in the fall. Here I am in the spring, so it's a little bit of an experiment. It should work, as long as I keep the roots moist and happy, and I don't leave them in the pot for too terribly long or let them dry out, they should be okay. If you want to cultivate stinging nettle, it needs a lot of moisture, especially in the spring. It does tend to tolerate some drought in the summer and fall, but it needs moisture to get going. So if you're going to put it in your yard, you need to put it in a place where there is water in the springtime. It will not survive in Spokane's dry climate without that moisture. So in my yard, I have specifically designed a place to put this. It's going to go in the very back corner. No kids, whether it be mine or her friends, should be running up into that corner of the property because it's behind the beehive. Don't run past the beehive. I put a soaker hose going through that area and wrapping around the corner several times, and that corner is where I'm going to plant this. So I'll plug into the soaker hose a few times in the spring and maybe once or twice a month in the summer. Give it some extra water, and that should be enough to keep this plant going, so I will have delicious spring greens every spring. Check that out. The yellow rhizomes. Look at that. Nice big crown. Lots of new growth going on right here. That's how far I got before it broke. One more real quick thing I want to say. If you do happen to get stung by a stinging nettle and you don't happen to have an antihistamine or hydrocortisone or anything handy, look around the area for dock. There are several dock plants, dock weeds, and several different things that are said in like folk remedies that they can counteract the sting of stinging nettle. That has not been scientifically proven, and the suspicion is more that it's just a counter stimulation that just kind of takes away the sting. But docks tend to grow in similar environments to stinging nettle, so it's kind of handy that, you know, a treatment is growing right nearby the nettle itself. That's kind of cool. When I've been stung by it in the past, I just went to a hose faucet and washed my hands, and that was enough to take the edge off. The cold water was enough to wash it away. I've never been stung badly either, so my first time coming across this plant, I just pulled it out, not even thinking of it, thinking it was just catnip or something, just yank it out, da-da-da-da-da, and kept going. And then suddenly the back of my hand, a few minutes later, started itching a bit, and, you know, just scratch it, move on to da-da-da-da-da, and then I noticed bumps. And I was kind of like, oh! And I look in my bucket, and I pull it up, and I look closer, and I'm like, that's not catnip. Those were my days as a younger gardener when I didn't know any better. So I planted the nettles back in this corner. I put them in the wood chips that I already had because the wood chips were very moist. They're also very rich in nutrients. I included the native soil that I had brought, the native from the place they came from, in the planting hole. So I'm hoping that, you know, that still keeps them comfortable and all that stuff. And I also set up a soaker hose in this area to water the things that I got planted around the border. And I wrapped it around this spot so that bees will get more water because that's what they want. So hopefully that's enough to keep bees alive and happy. Touch back on it in a while. If anybody's interested, let me know in the comments below. In the meantime, guys, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the garden.